Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we talk the New Orleans Pelicans. We will try to touch on Roger Goodell and that, no press conference, like a no call that happened the other day. But we'll concentrate on what's going on with the New Orleans Pelicans and, of course, Anthony Davis asking for a trade. Tonight, we have two great guests that cover the Pelicans like nobody else. Oleh Kosel of the Bird Rights joins us on the program now. David Grubb of CrestleySports.com will join us shortly. Oleh, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us once again. What a crazy time it's been. And one thing I can tell you about your great site, you guys do a fantastic job in covering the Pelicans from so many angles. Talk a little about the site. Talk about, the podcast. Kind of lay it out for folks.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Thanks for that warm welcome. Yeah, we've been kind of busy lately. So We're publishing a lot of articles, talking a lot on podcasts. And if you check our social media, we're on there 24 hours a day, both on Twitter and on Facebook. So please give us a follow, come to our site. There's something fresh every day. And right now it's been about 3 or 4 articles because there's a lot to talk about.
Yes.
News changing every hour.
Right. And of course, everything can be found at the Bird Rights, the podcast, everything there as far as that goes?
Right, yeah.
And how many writers do you guys have now?
Ooh, we're up to over 10. We just actually got David coming on part-time as well.
Oh, so, beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Trying to dominate the market now.
Well, you guys do a great job. You're my go-to guy. David's with me every week, no matter whether it's Pelican season or not. We're talking Pelicans on my radio show, and it's good to have him back on the television show. As I mentioned, David Grubb of CrestleySports.com will join us shortly on the program. Well, a lot has happened over the last week. It was a little bit unexpected for most fans in terms of the trade demands of Anthony Davis. For those that don't know, we'll catch you up really quickly. On Friday, Rich Paul of Clutch Sports, the new agent for Anthony Davis, informed Dell Demps, the general manager of the New Orleans Pelicans, that they would not sign the Supermax extension in the summertime, 5 years, $240 million if he was to stay with the Pelicans. This was not obviously released over the weekend. On Monday, Rich Paul came out and made this public. And of course, it has been an absolute firestorm since then. How do we get here?
Oh, Eric, how much time you got?
No, we got about an hour.
All right. Well, we got here simply because Anthony Davis wanted to leave, and for good reason. This has not been a winning situation for him. A guy of his caliber, they're always expected to win. They want to establish a legacy. That's what you're going to be remembered for. Well, New Orleans Pelicans have made exactly 2 playoffs, won 1 series, and you know what? Anthony Davis has had enough.
With that said, when you start talking about Anthony Davis having enough, a lot of people are debating again the money. How do you walk away from 5 years, $240 million? I get it. When you look at the futility of the club, when you look at, as you mentioned, just a couple playoff appearances, the revolving door of players, the inability to go out and really get another bona fide star next to him. You could talk about Boogie Cousins, but at the end of the day, he was basically a rental. You hope that you could keep him. Unfortunately for him and for the club, you had the Achilles tendon injury. The team has been snake bitten at times in terms of injuries, but you know, in professional sports, injury is no excuse, especially when you have a once-in-a-generational player. The ineptness of the front office, in my opinion, is the reason why we are here today.
That's the biggest reason, Eric. He hasn't had enough around him at all times to make up for those injuries. You know, at the start of the season, they start 4-0, completely healthy. Once they all got injured, we went for about a month-long stretch of where they played really bad basketball. They kept on hanging their hats on those 4 games, saying, look, if we had our guys, well, first of all, if you had a full roster, you wouldn't have had to worry about it. But second of all, they actually hung their hat on something that actually wasn't stable. Those guys came back, and guess what? They didn't start winning right away. So it's really been a 500 team once they were all fully healthy. So that start was a mirage. This roster is not even close to being the same as last year. They really miss Rajon Rondo. Boogie even provides something in that locker room. Now, Elfrid's a great guy. Julius Randle, he's a hard-nosed scorer. He can get you a lot of numbers. But they cannot fill the shoes of what the Pelicans need the most. That was leadership. That was direction. And you're not going to get that really with an Alvin Gentry-led squad. You don't get that from Drew. You don't get it from AD. They're both quiet guys. So the roster is just really incomplete. That's what they walked in the season. Now, I know Dell Demps, I know the front office wanted to bring Rondo back. They really did. Elfrid was just going to be a backup. But when he said no, went to LA, they should have found a backup plan. You know, there should have been something else done. So it really does fall on the front office.
Right. Let's talk about Rondo for a few minutes here, because I think that was kind of the catalyst of this really starting. You know, again, when you look at how much Anthony Davis looked up to Rondo, when you look to, again, even if he wasn't on the court, as you mentioned on my radio show, which I would like you to kind of go into a little bit, the challenges that he would give Davis and the rest of the team on a nightly basis. Was it out of the realm of possibility that they could have found the money somewhere? We're talking about a difference of $2 million. Again, maybe they didn't foresee this, but if it came down to money, not paying the $2 million basically, again, kind of led to where they are right now. Kind of talk a little bit about Rondo, his influence on this team last year, and then the inability to be able to re-sign him, and how that maybe kind of started this in motion.
Yeah, Rondo meant everything to this locker room. Anthony Davis looked up to him every single night. So did the rest of the team. Rondo was a guy breaking down film every night. When they're on the road, he was the one pulling them into his his hotel room, showing them plays, what to expect, what to do. Before games, Rondo's going to AD saying, "Get me 40 and 20. Look for this out of this guy. Take advantage of that." All this stuff. So you would have hoped, and the hope was by Dell Demps in the front office, that they could have sustained the loss of him because they had learned something from him. They relied on Drew Holiday and Anthony Davis taking that next step, and you know what? It didn't happen. So Rondo, you know, they weren't able to replace his production. They found out the hard way. And when you look at the difference in the money, the $2 million, it kind of is a big deal because the Pelicans could only offer the full amount of the MLE. They couldn't go above it. They had no cap space to play with. So by taking $9 million, he literally went to LA, made about $400,000 more. Shows me that he was unhappy with something. Because the Pelicans expected him back. It came out of left field to them, from what I've been told, that he signed with the Lakers.
Right. So a $400,000 difference between staying with New Orleans and heading over to the Lakers. And of course, do you think that the organization realized what he meant to this team?
I think they did. I mean, Alvin gushed about him all the time. You saw Rondo leading them in practices.
Yes.
Talking, calling out plays from the bench while, they're in fourth quarter in crunch time. It's Rondo they were looking to for guidance, you name it. So, yes, he was a big part of everything. And everybody literally, put their faith, their trust in him. And then suddenly they don't have him. I think that was a big crushing blow. And, maybe AD, maybe Drew brushed aside, or maybe they knew, they just didn't tell us. But either way, we now see the loss of him, the impact.
One of the things that I had talked about on the radio show, carrot and a stick, so to speak. Rondo would like to be a coach one day. This organization obviously needed his leadership. You saw the difference in this team. People have to remember, Boogie Cousins was injured when they made this run in the second half of the season. A lot of that, again, Rondo being the catalyst for this. We saw this pace really rise to the pace that you really thought that you were going to get when Alvin Gentry came on as head coach. Was there anything else that they could have offered him? The possibility of being on the staff down the line when he retires? Or was this simply about going out to LA and getting a chance to play with LeBron?
That certainly could have been a part of it, maybe competing for a championship. I think maybe it could have been even DeMarcus Cousins, the way he was handled by the front office. Because remember, DeMarcus is the one that's responsible for Rondo coming to New Orleans in the first place. And so suddenly you don't give your buddy, the deal that he was seeking. So Rondo, suddenly isn't so apt to come back. So it could have been that. It could have been a lot of things there. But I think just going to a winning situation, that was the number one thing. And I've heard that Rondo likes the bright lights. We all heard
Yes.
of TNT Rondo.
Sure.
So I think that was part of the allure as well. Maybe AD even knew he wasn't staying long term. You know, maybe somehow Rondo had worded that, so why am I going to commit to this organization? Could be a host of things.
When you start looking at the situation with Rondo and Boogie, how much do you think that played into what we're seeing now? The way, again, that they were treated. You know, we had the comments by Boogie Cousins saying that we didn't get a return call from Dell Demps, that there was no negotiation. You had Rondo saying that he would have come back to New Orleans, you know, in hindsight. But again, it was all about the negotiations, the disconnect between management and him and his management team. How much do you think that has affected where we are today with Anthony Davis?
Well, somebody reported, I'm not sure who it was, said they took a look at this, asked Anthony about it, and supposedly the thought is he doesn't like the way things have been handled, the way things have been said, the way players have been treated. A lot of it has to do with the way this structure is built here in New Orleans, where you really just have Dell Demps and his people, and you have no president above him that has a basketball mind. I mean, Mickey Loomis, great guy, does a wonderful job with the Saints, but he's even admitted to everybody that he's a football guy and he delegates everything else to Dell. Every other franchise has a president. They have somebody else next to that general manager making decisions, not the Pelicans.
We're gonna pick that up here in just a couple minutes. So we're gonna take a quick break. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest tonight, Oleh Kosel, the Bird Rights, David Grubb of CrescentCitySports.com to join us after the break. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Stay tuned.
A good game plan is the key to success. When my team hits the field, we always have a game plan.
You should take the same approach with emergency planning. That's why Coach O and I urge you to get a game plan to make sure you, your family, and your pets are safe this hurricane season. Visit GoSEPsGetAGamePlan.org and download the new and improved Get a Game Plan app for important emergency planning information and tools to keep you safe.
Take advantage of the time you have before an emergency. Finalize your plans. Have 3 days worth of supplies and other essentials in your emergency supply kit. Contact your parish OEP office if you have medical or transportation issues that will make it difficult to evacuate.
You play an important role in making our emergency plans work. Take the time to learn your responsibilities.
Like I always say,
One team, one heartbeat.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest tonight, Oleh Kosel, the Bird Rights, David Grubb of CrescentCitySports.com. We're talking Pelicans, Anthony Davis. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Before we get started, tell the folks about CrescentCitySports.com.
Again, we're the leader in local sports coverage. Nobody covers more high school, college, and pro sports than we do. And we got some great writers there. So we also do video and live game coverage. So yeah.
I asked Oleh this question. I'll ask you this question. How did we get here?
I guess I guess you'd have to start the day Anthony was drafted. I mean, really, because when Dell was given the edict to win now, I think that compromised the entire Anthony Davis era. He was forced to go out and get young veterans,
Right.
In an effort to make that team a playoff contender right out the bat, and they got a hodgepodge of players who didn't fit together, personality-wise or skill-wise. And there was no structure really to grow Anthony as not just a talent, but as a leader, making sure that they understood that the keys to the franchise were given to him to make him mature in that role. And there were constant struggles. You immediately had that turnover from the first year. You had guys leaving. Then the second year, more turnover. Then the third year, more turnover. So as long as that roster kept that constant upheaval, you can't get an identity. And the one cornerstone of all those moves, Drew Holiday, his injuries in those first 3 years that he was here really hampered him. And so he really, just in the last 2 years, has become the kind of sidekick that a franchise player needs. So I think there's just been this perpetual kind of trying to build the plane while it's flying with this franchise, and there was never really a comprehensive plan on saying we don't have to rush, we can be good, because that was the most important thing I think in a market like this, is to be good for the long haul, and they were trying to do it immediately, and that was a failure.
Was that a byproduct of Mr. Benson's age, in your opinion?
I think he was more concerned at the time of the viability with the franchise rather than thinking about trying to get to a championship. After George Shinn had kind of poisoned the waters, there was a lot of just bad feelings. And then when you go into the Chris Paul trade and all those things, people were feeling, like the
they are
franchise, lost. And so you get this shiny new player who's supposed to be a generational talent, number one pick in the draft that you didn't expect. And I think that they felt like, well, we've got to sell tickets, so we need a competitive team immediately. And my argument has been, and Oleh and I have talked about this, is that New Orleans will support a team that's gritty and is competing. As long as people see that they're getting better, they would rather have that team than to have a team that they've had with over the last few years that is perpetually underachieved.
Yes.
No matter how much talent it has.
Right. What are your thoughts? Was this about Tom Benson's age? What was the rush? Why was there a rush here?
Well, it's definitely an edict that came from ownership.
Okay.
And of course, part of it had to do with age. But the bigger thing was Tom was all about profits. If you looked at the way he ran his businesses, he wasn't in it just for show. He wanted to make money, get out, and that's how he operated. So I think he took that model to his sports teams. And the Pelicans obviously were one, and they were not drawing anybody. When he took over this team, Shinn, like David mentioned too, really did poison this city because he wanted to break up what was a good team that almost got to the conference finals,
no doubt.
should have gotten the conference finals, but then after that it was just so steadily downhill. You heard the players, talking about how they were just cutting around the edges, that David West wasn't treated right, Chris Paul wasn't. So of course there was bad, feelings. So Tom Benson came in with really no fan base. So the best way to do that, you got to put people in the seats. You got to make people want to come to games. They got to win. They got to show something. You can't wait another 3-4 years in a rebuild like what Philly did.
Right.
They had to go that route, and I think they gave that mandate to Dell Demps.
Right. There was a power struggle between Dell Demps and Monty Williams. Dell Demps won that power struggle. When you look at with the direction of this team, it looked like it was on an upward trend with Monty Williams. Since then, it's kind of been on a downward trend with the exception of what we saw last year. Talk about the change there once again, Monty Williams ended up losing the power struggle and they went with Dell Demps.
Well, Dell never had a chance to pick his coach. Monty was already here.
Right.
And Dell wanted a faster pace. Monty was just the opposite. He wasn't interested in player development as much as slowing the game down and getting those wins. He just believed in possessions. He valued possessions. So when you saw Amino, Marcus Thornton making stupid young rookie mistakes out there, he would yank them. He would play guys that would at least do what he asked. And so it wasn't an exciting team, wasn't a fun team, but they generally got the job done right. But that was not what Dell wanted. That was not his vision. So that's why Monty basically lost. The team didn't become sensational winners when he was here with AD under his wings. Like you said, there was steady improvement, but they just had that one playoff showing and they got swept real badly. I know there was a couple close games, but Golden State Warriors turned it a laughing stock, that whole series. So it was an easy decision, I think, for Mickey, for the guys above. Dell selling them, hey, we can turn Anthony Davis into this monster. If we go play faster versus Monty, well, he's got some good relationships, but it's not really winning, is it? So they moved on from Monty.
Your thoughts?
I mean, it's really, the two situations are extremely similar to what we've had with both coaches, because that playoff team got in by the skin of its teeth.
Yes.
And the big part of it was Kevin Durant missed like 30 games that season.
Yep.
So Oklahoma City missed out, and they get on basically the last day of the season.
Right.
So
the big shot against San Antonio, right?
So you're looking at a team that I think that Dell decided, we're not going to get any better with this group. We're not going to get better with this coach. We need to make a change. Well, then here you are. You see what happened last year. Perfect storm. They get into the playoffs. They have to win their last 5 games to get in. They're the 6th seed. They beat a Portland team that was the best matchup possible for them. And I think, again, they realized this team isn't going to advance, because, again, that was their mantra, that, hey, it's not as easy as it looked. That series was not indicative of our full level of talent. So it's very strange that the kind of the end of both of those eras are going to be the same almost.
Well, and again, what's interesting is, again, Demps winning the power struggle here, wanting to go with a more up-tempo team, but yet he didn't give Gentry the pieces to be able to run that type of style. Again, so that was part of it. The albatross contracts that we've seen that have held this team back. Omer Ashik, again, you're talking about Solomon Hill now. There's been a long list of those. Some will say about the team being snake bit. Well, I mean, the team's been snake bit really since Dell Demps has been here. So, sometimes if a team is snake bit, maybe you got to look at the person that's in the front office. I'm not a fan of Dell Demps. I was when he first came to New Orleans. Slowly but surely, again, that eroded with me. When you let a Hall of Famer go out the door in Chris Paul, again, that is the first strike against you. And then, of course, now you've got a situation where you've got another Hall of Famer that's walking out the door as well. As you mentioned, the difference with George Shinn is again, he was cash poor. It was the beginning of the end once Tyson Chandler was dealt because, again, of this false narrative that he'll never be able to play again because of his foot, and he's still playing today. Okay? And then David West understood it. Chris Paul's and it's been said that once they realized that they were going to break up Paul and West, that Paul realized that I'm not going to win here. And of course, they forced the commissioner to be able to make the move because by that time, the NBA had bought the team. Dell Demps still was able to transition with the new ownership group. And he gets Anthony Davis. I mean, it's a once-in-a-generation type move here. You lose a Hall of Famer. You get a Hall of Famer back, a future Hall of Famer back. But yet, again, he was never able to be able to put a team around him that would give him an opportunity to win consistently. And then I fault not just Dell Demps, again, for the problems that we've seen in terms of putting a legitimate playoff team on the floor. I also blame ownership. From Tom Benson to Gail Benson, there are a lot of dirty hands with this. When you talk about ownership, when you talk about Mickey Loomis, when you talk about Dell Demps, on why Anthony Davis is leaving. Your thoughts?
You can, again, if you've got an hour, you can sit and use them all, every single minute up. I don't feel like when Dell Demps came in, the ownership, and that's including Tom Benson when he first bought the team, did everything they could to help this team win. Look, we're still waiting on a G League team. The medical side took forever to just get up to par, up to snuff. I mean, Drew Holiday, about 3 years ago, we were the laughingstock, and rightfully so. If you looked at the media guide, there was maybe one doctor, one or two physical trainers, and maybe one other guy. If you looked at other team guides, there's at least 9, 10 guys.
So they went on the cheap.
They did not spend the money across the board like they should. They weren't cheap with the players, obviously.
But with the organization.
Yes, I think that hurt. And that's why you saw players getting hurt continue. New Orleans always ranked in the bottom. I mean, every single year. So you talk about being snake bitten. Well, you kind of caused the problems. The prevention was never there. Look at the teams that take it seriously.
This wasn't bad luck.
No.
This was not spending the money.
Look at the way the Raptors, the Spurs, other teams, either they can bounce back from injury or they just avoid them.
Denver Nuggets.
Great analogy. Yeah, they've been winning all season. They're at top of the West when they've had Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, everybody. Will Barton missed most of the season. Everybody's been hurt. They're still winning.
Right. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the big thing from the organization was that they didn't put an infrastructure in place, and I think that was both naivete, thinking that they could combine the Saints and the Pelicans operations, even though basketball operations and football are two very different structures. And because basketball is so much more player driven, it's individualized needs. And that's why you see players with their specific strength coaches and people working with them. And then you talk about for Gentry, let's get past Monty, and then you talk about for Alvin. You say you want to run, and you give him lineups that are not built for that.
Right.
Tyreek Evans, Eric Gordon, you give him Ryan Anderson. You give him nothing that works for what he wants to do. Omir Ashik, none of those players fit his system. And every year, there's been at least one major overhaul of that lineup. I mean, in the last year, 2 years alone, I guess a year and a half, you go from DeMarcus Cousins at the All-Star break, and then the next year you've changed your starting lineup again by bringing in Rondo, Tony Allen, all those guys, and they didn't pan out. And now you've got this lineup this year with Randall. And it's just a constant overhaul. So how can you get any continuity? How can players understand their roles in each other? Because basketball is so much of a field sport where guys have to know where they're going to be.
And you know where you see that the most? End of game situations.
Yes.
The Pelicans last year were wonderful. Why? They had Rondo. They had leadership, direction at the end of the games. This year, they seemingly lose every single game. They found a way. Missing shots, not rotating defensively. There was always a breakdown somewhere, and that shows in what Davis said. So I love the argument that people try and say AD hasn't had enough talent. I feel like you really see the problems crop up at the end of game situations where they truly show themselves. Like I said, the leadership, like an ill-fitting roster built, all those type of things. And that's where I think you need to attribute the faults of this season's team. You got a lot of 20-point scorers on this team. You got a lot of able bodies, but it just doesn't work.
Right. Guys, what do you think happens with Dell Demps? Trading deadline, who's making the calls now? We're going to get into Anthony Davis, what may happen, but again, we know that Mirotic and Randall, Moore, the entire lineup, everybody is on the block right now, trying to acquire assets, whether it's young players or draft choices. I'll take you first, Dave. What happens to Dell Demps? What do you think happens here? Is he done at the end of the season? Do they keep him around? Has he been handcuffed now to the point where he's been handcuffed and muzzled, and he's not allowed to make a deal without, again, Mickey Loomis, who's not a basketball guy, signing off on him?
He's still taking calls. We know that. We know that he's making calls. Now, I think that he has been told certain things that he cannot do. And I believe the Pelicans do want to have a president of basketball operations in place, and I think that person will make the final evaluation because Mrs. Benson does like Dell and she likes Alvin. So I think that she's going to give the next person a chance to evaluate them. I don't think she wants to push either one of them out of the door in the regular season. And I think part of it too is some defiance, considering the stern comments about Dell, and then now Anthony trying to force Dell's hand and push him to LA. So I think there's a little bit of defiance by Mrs. Benson and from Mickey Loomis of just, we're not going to be forced to do something because you want us to.
A little bit of blindness too, if you can't see the forest for the trees.
And you've also got to add that if you're going to replace a general manager at this point in time, the trade deadlines,
right.
What was it, when Anthony Davis announced it was 10 days away.
Right.
You can't make all the transformations you need and still be viable in negotiations. You just can't. I've heard that that's one of the reasons why they definitely gave Dell Demps this leash to at least stay on through the end of the year. He's got everybody on his phone dial. They do need to make moves. They got to sell something for these players and get some assets in return. We've seen what happens when they don't do that.
Right.
Ryan Anderson walking out the door,
Yep.
Eric Gordon,
Right.
and I heard there were some offers back then. Dell didn't take them.
Right.
The Cavs offer. Remember
Yeah.
for Ryan Anderson, the Cavs, Kevin Love and Ryan Anderson
Right.
were a part
So,
of a 3-team deal.
At least they're doing it the right way. So that's why I don't have a problem with Dell, them extending the leash. Let's see what he does. Let him finish it out. But let's just follow this vision. They have to rebuild. Look, there's no going back because this elephant in the room is Anthony Davis. He has said he's going. There's no way of saving this ship. So Dell's got really no other choice.
Guys, where's Danny Ferry in all this? I mean, he's not capable as a former general manager of an NBA team to be able to handle. I mean, again, I think the fan base at this point would like to see them do something. Fire Dell. Okay, I don't say about Alvin. Alvin again, trying to change the coach at midseason, but fire Dell. Show that you're not happy with what's going on. Danny Ferry's not capable of being able to make the calls, field the calls, make the deal.
I think, honestly, Danny Ferry is just an extension of Dell Demps.
Right.
So if you replace him with him, what are you really gaining there? These two probably work best when they're together. I think that's why this union has been around for so long. So if you get rid of one, are you really improving anything?
So new broom sweeps clean.
Yeah.
I think pretty much you have to because, like you said, because Dell's had to take all the responsibility with basketball. Everybody in that building is his person. So if you get rid of him, there still will be that problem of we're loyal to Dell. We share that same mindset. So yeah, if you want to be, it's not about Dell in particular. Like you said, it's time for it to go. The marriage has not worked. And that just happens in life. Yeah,
9 years with one GM in the NBA and only having
three
playoff appearances during
one
his time.
series win.
That's incredible. Okay, that's hitting a Powerball because again, normally you get 2 or 3 seasons and you're done. There's a turnover. Now in the NFL, you might stay with a guy 5 years. But even then, staying 9 years with 3 playoff appearances, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. All three of us have talked about an organizational chart. Again, how that has to change here. You discussed it. You said it. Again, they've got to separate the Saints and the Pelicans. Again, they no longer can't merge everything and try to go on the cheap here. What happens now? What has to happen for this team to turn it around so if they happen to get the next Anthony Davis, he's not walking out the door after his second contract?
Yeah, you've got to model yourself after the most successful franchises. That's how it works. And you've got to look at what they do and what they have in terms of people at certain posts. And the Pelicans don't have that. And from what I've heard, that at least they're really entertaining the idea of adding a president. And it's not going to be Mickey Loomis. It's going to be a basketball guy. So already they're acknowledging the faults and they're going to work on them. So I think, again, that's why you give the benefit of doubt to ownership now. They've understood the mistakes. I mean, you have to learn. When you're letting Anthony Davis walk out this door with all the disappointment after disappointment, I think you have to, if you're Gail Benson, if you're a committed ownership, you have to go the right route. So that's why I'm hopeful, honestly. My spirit's a little bit better because 2 months ago we're losing. You kind of start hearing these murmurs, and you're wondering where is all this headed. At least you kind of see now a light at the end of the tunnel.
Right. Unfortunately, it takes Anthony Davis to walk out the door for that to happen. What do you think about the organizational chart? Is it going to be president, GM? I mean, how's that going to work?
Yeah. I think there'll be a president and there'll be a new GM and there may be a new coach. But again, I think that the biggest thing is, the scouting department needs to be augmented. How are they select? But they haven't drafted. They haven't drafted anybody.
Right.
So what has scouting really been doing for them at this point? So you need to be able, if you're going to, of course, out of these trades, you're going to be getting picks back, and you can't waste them. You're going to make some mistakes, but they need to start hitting some doubles, some triples, because they haven't hit a home. Outside of a Anthony Davis type, you're not going to get a home run. So I think that's a big important thing. And then you need an identity. We've talked a lot about, Oleh and I spent a lot of time talking about the teams that you see in smaller markets. The buy-in that you get is that there is an absolute identity, whether it's the grit and grind Memphis Grizzlies, whether it's how Utah has always played a certain way. Denver has always been an up-tempo team that features a lot of passing. And cities embrace styles. And I think, New Orleans needs to figure out what it wants to be as an organization and as a team. How do you want to play? And you have to make sure that the players you bring in suit that style. Not just that they're available and that they'll take the check, but that they suit what you're trying to do.
Piggyback on that if you would, Oleh.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. David nailed it. They brought in Alvin. Dell Demps wanted to play fast, but yet we had players that simply were not good at playing fast. They were not good in transition. Drew Holiday has never really played well, despite all the great things he does. He doesn't like to play fast. He's not a finisher in transition. And who do you have alongside when this all started with Alvin? Eric Gordon, another one that can't finish, and Tyreek Evans, who really can't get above the rim. So you had three ball-dominant type of guys, whether shooters or just driving to the rim, all of a sudden trying to initiate this offensive style from Alvin Gentry. So it was a failure from the start. They never improved upon that model. They did briefly. They did have Rondo. Like I said, that's when you saw the magic of what could work. But you know what? Then you don't bring back the same pieces. And you thought you maybe had it in a similar style with Alfred and Julius, but obviously they're not the same guys.
Right.
So it's always been, to me, a key. You had this identity. They were so excited to have found what they did last year, but you've got to continue it, and they kind of didn't simply because the pieces were wrong.
And somebody has to be the leader.
Right.
Yes.
Rondo is at the end of his career, and he was the biggest voice. He and Tony Allen both were the biggest voices in that locker room.
They've been important leadership the entire time Anthony Davis has been here.
And Anthony, for all the things that he can do, he is not the leader of that team.
And that's hurt.
That hurts a lot because you can only take so much from a guy who does it all on the court. There are times when you need your best player to grab somebody by the jersey.
Yes.
And
finish
say,
the game strongly.
Right. And I mean, his numbers in the clutch this year have been terrible.
Yes.
I mean, that's just a fact. And again, it's not to diminish Anthony. I don't want people thinking you're doing a hatchet job.
Right.
But on the podcast, we talked about maybe we just asked Anthony to do things that he's not capable of. And that's the leadership part.
Right.
We assumed that he could do it and that he would grow into it. But that's just not his personality. And if you don't have somebody in your locker room who's going to get everybody in check, then that's when your problems really start to creep up.
You can't win. You need to have everything in place. NBA is so competitive nowadays. Yes. It'll show at the end of games, like I said. That's going to be the difference in win-loss. That's why it's so funny to look. The Pelicans for all year have had a positive point differential, yet they've always been usually under 500. And that's, like I said, you're just missing that one ingredient, but it's a big ingredient.
Guys, we hear all the time, and I'm not trying to disparage Mrs. Benson, but, you just mentioned a few minutes ago, she likes Dell. She likes Gentry. Well, in professional sports, you can like people all you want. It's a bottom line business. You have to win. And again, will she have what it takes to be able to, and this has always been the big question here. If things go south with either the Saints or the Pelicans, does she have what it takes to be able to make the tough decisions and to fire people? And again, Dell lingering, most fan base at this point would be, again, as this one is asking for someone's head. They want someone to be able to walk the plank because, again, another generational player is walking out the door. The fact you're holding on to Dell, I get it through the trading deadline. But even any possibility of him staying because of, again, the affinity of the ownership or the owner for that particular person, that's got to go out the window here. It's professional sports.
No, I agree. I think we haven't seen Gail yet put to the test. I think we're about to.
Oh,
I think that's important.
Right now she is.
Yes. And we've seen already two things she's done. And one was, of course, with the Saints. She issued that statement after that no call.
Yes.
Her disappointment. And all the small markets, all the ones that have always been discouraged by what's happened in the NFL, they kind of piggyback. They enjoyed that. She's now done the same thing. Recently, I think it was just today, I think I read ESPN said that Gail is going to carry that small market flag, that banner.
That banner, right.
And carry it, and because she's not going to be pushed around, so that's good to hear that she, as the owner, despite being a female, despite not having too much knowledge in the basketball area, sporting, let's just face it, she's not a sports mom.
Right.
But the fact that she's willing to do what it takes to help New Orleans improve all these teams, I think that matters. So let's just see if she follows through.
It's one thing to put out a statement saying you're carrying the banner. It's one thing to put out a statement talking about the no call and everything that's going on. It's a whole nother thing to get in and sit down with those board of governors or those owners of the NFL and stand up among them and again, make your point and be taken seriously. And that's going to be the interesting part of this going forward. The first thing is you got to be able to prove that you know what you're doing in terms of your own club and you're willing and able to make the tough decisions that have to be made. The comment about we love Anthony Davis, we'd like him to stay, but we can't stop him if he wants to go. I don't think that sat well with again, the fan base. It's nice to be nice, but professional sports is not a nice game.
I think actually that was an indicator.
Of course.
Because I think they knew, again, by the time the public finds out about these things, that ship has already sailed.
Right.
So I think she knew then, and I think the organization knew. I mean, there are people that I've talked to who said that last year this had already started to come, and that even under his previous representation, he had been advised.
Who was a New Orleans agent, native New Orleanian, right?
And Thad Fouché, and he had advised him on more than one occasion that, hey, we need to get out of here.
Right.
So, I mean, this has been something that's been brewing for a while.
You would agree with that?
Absolutely. I heard the same things. And credit to Anthony Davis that he did decide to stay. I mean, I heard legitimately he wanted to give this a chance, make it work in New Orleans. But I think he saw the writing on the wall, and especially this summer, once he went with the new representation in Clutch Sports, there was no going back. I think that's when his mind was definitely made up.
All right, we're going to take a break. We come back. We're going to talk about Clutch Sports. We're going to talk about Anthony Davis. We're going to talk about the prospective teams he could go to. We'll talk about all the things that have really kind of surrounded this thing over the last couple of days. David Grubb of CressleySports.com. Oleh, Kosel, the Bird Rights, are our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Stay tuned.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, David Grubb of CressleySports.com, Oleh Kosel of the Bird Rights. Guys, a lot of things have transpired over the last couple of days. We're going to kind of get into Clutch Sports. How, again, they're trying to bully the Pelicans into moving Anthony Davis to Los Angeles to play for the Lakers. But the other peripheral things that have been going on that I call petty, okay, and almost like a jilted lover. There was the Instagram post that came out on Tuesday, and you're seeing this now right now on the screen. True Teammates with Gio Okafor and also Elfrid Payton slapping five. And then, of course, last night they unveiled the new video, and the video leaves Anthony Davis out of the video with Davis sitting on the bench. To me, it just seems very, very petty. Some people out there, they're embracing it. They love it. I don't. I think it's a players' league, and I think that, again, the players on that bench are seeing this. I think players around the league are seeing this. I think that when you get into that small club of all-stars and superstars, that they talk, and they talk about, again, their experiences in a city with an organization, how they were treated. And I think you got to look at this, not in the short term, but in the long game here on how, again, you're going to rebuild this roster. David, I'll take you first. Are they being a little petty with all this peripheral stuff going on?
Yeah, they are. I understand some of it, and I understand taking him out of the video because you don't expect him to play again in your uniform, and you don't want to give the impression of false advertising to people. I think that's important. The other parts, the social media parts, I understand taking the picture down, off of the banner. I get that, but like you said, when you start trying to take subtle digs, this is still a guy who's going to get his jersey retired here.
Yeah, should.
And I think the important thing to do, I mean, he's walking out with just about every record in the in franchise history, and I think the thing is, there has to be some kind of proper send-off. Even though this is not ending the way anybody wanted it to, but like they say, if things didn't end badly, they wouldn't end. So I think that there has to be a way to say goodbye in a proper way for both parties. For the fans who appreciate Anthony, and I think most do. So I think they need their opportunity to say goodbye, and I think he deserves the opportunity to face them and say, thank you. Thank you for 7 years. Yeah. But I don't know where that opportunity comes now because of the way now that it's starting to go. Yeah. So, and after the trade deadline is going to be even worse.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
I think you have to wait for that tribute, though, because the situation has deteriorated so much. You're pointing out one example of it, the Pelicans reacting to it.
Yes.
Monday, Alvin Gentry told us that Anthony Davis, once his finger was healthy, he's going to play again.
Yes.
He's going to be practicing again.
Right.
2 days later, he's talking to us in pregame saying, look, I don't know how to answer that question. And I'm saying he was being
He's in a tough
honest.
spot.
They put him in a tough spot.
They put him in a lot of tough spots.
Yeah.
They reversed how they wanted to treat the Anthony Davis situation, rightfully so. You cannot have this guy go out there on the court and get hurt, suffer an ACL tear, Achilles tear, anything that really destroys the Pelicans' chance of getting as much as they can for Anthony Davis in a trade. And Rich Paul and his representation, or his Clutch Sports team, don't want to see Anthony Davis get hurt either. So, I mean, it all makes sense in the world. It just wasn't handled properly from the start. And now, like I said, we're seeing the deterioration. You've seen what the Lakers have been saying out there, and that's all coming from Rich Paul. They're pressuring the Pelicans, and they don't like it, and they shouldn't like it. But you're kind of seeing why the example of Anthony Davis being removed from the video.
And it's just so surreal. I mean, you watch the Houston game, and you see him on the sidelines, and he's getting up and talking to the coaching staff. And that's not something that you normally saw him do when he missed games.
Right.
That wasn't who he was before.
Yes.
And all of a sudden you see him doing that, and
almost
it just
trying to fit in, right?
strange.
Yeah.
It just, and then to take all the
Trying to
guys
be
out
helpful.
to dinner afterwards and all these. It all feels so strange. It makes you feel more and more that it tells you a lot about Anthony's personality. That he is more guided than pulling the train.
Right.
And he's a nice guy, though.
But he's young. He's young, right?
That too.
I mean,
He doesn't want to be disliked.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
He doesn't.
He loves being loved.
But he's letting Rich Paul be the bad guy.
Right.
But people are not
But
going
it's
to
dragging
remember.
him down as well, and that's the problem I feel.
But guys, all three of us have talked about this on the radio show. When he hired Rich Paul, it wasn't about, again, negotiating a 5-year, $240 million deal, because that was there. This was either about, again, getting sponsorships, getting him out there, getting more promotional opportunities, or setting him up to be able to move on to a bigger market. And we all know, again, with the ties of Rich Paul and Clutch Sports to LeBron James, the natural destination was going to be with the Lakers. They're trying to bully the Pelicans right now, okay? Your thoughts, David?
You don't have to give the Lakers anything. There's no impetus to do it. You have Anthony under contract for a year and a half. So why only have one suitor that you can deal with? There's probably 20 teams that are probably going to make bids on Anthony Davis.
Or should.
And then you want, just like anybody else, you want bidders fighting against each other, upping their ante. Someone on Twitter today was contacting me about why they don't take the Lakers deal. And I said, the Lakers are willing to give you everything. And in a negotiation, I want stuff that you don't want to give me. If I'm giving away my best player, I want stuff that you don't want to give me. The Lakers are willing to give you everything. That tells you a lot, in my mind, about that level of talent. You take those guys that the Lakers have had, They didn't win 35 games as a group without LeBron. So what makes you think they're going to come to New Orleans and win you 50 games, 45 games?
No, that's
Same question. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And we learned this from the start. When Woj broke the news that Anthony Davis wanted out, immediately we heard that the New Orleans Pelicans do not want to send him to Los Angeles because they did not like what they had. And we've already heard in the recent days since, Lonzo Ball doesn't even want to stay here.
Right.
And you just have to look at these players, as David mentioned. Kyle Kuzma, he's known as a great scorer, right? He's barely shooting over 30% from three. Brandon Ingram, we're not even sure if this guy's going to stay in the league long term.
And he can't shoot the three at all.
No.
There's no star potential with any of these players, so why should New Orleans be pressured into trading to Los Angeles, right? That's why we're seeing this scrum by the Lakers, and it's going to continue up until February 7th. Once we get past that date, things will settle down, and that's the path that everybody wants to see, but we got to get there first. But you've got to get every other team involved, and the Boston Celtics are the ones that are sitting in the corner, and they've even mentioned a couple days ago, look, you wait for us, we'll give you anything you want. And you know what? We want a lot of things they have.
Right. All right. That's where we're going to go next. Let's talk about the teams out there with the best packages, even based on what happened today with the New York Knicks making a move with the Dallas Mavericks. Let's talk about the teams with the best packages out there that can make this team, again, still an instant playoff team in the West. I'm not saying contender.
Right.
I'm not saying a team that's going to challenge the Golden State Warriors. I'm saying a team that is going to be a playoff team and going to win more games than they lose in the West. I'll take you first, David.
Well, outside of the obvious, Boston.
Boston, right. And if you would list some of the players that Boston has.
Let's start with
okay.
Boston.
Start with
Yes.
Boston. Obviously,
And you can chime in as well.
the jewel of Boston is Jason Tatum.
Yes.
That's who everyone wants. He's definitely got star potential. He's a wing player, which the Pelicans have not had a small forward, obviously, in a very long time. He can do those things. He's athletic. He has that personality. He could be a star in your city. So he's the key to that. Then you talk about a guy like Marcus Smart, who's a great defensive guard, comes in at a reasonable price. He'll be that. He'll give you put him and Drew in a backcourt defensively. That's about as good a defensive backcourt as you're going to find in the NBA. And then you're picking from guys like Terry Rozier, who would have to do a sign and trade because of his restricted free agent status. And then Jaylen Brown, who the Celtics don't want to part with both Tatum and Brown. But again, if the
Ainge said everybody's available, right?
If the bidding gets that high, you start asking for those guys. And then of course they have an insane number of picks, and you want the more picks you can get, the better. So the Celtics have a great great number.
There's a blueprint that the Pelicans want to follow, and that is get us a guy with star potential, fill in some other good key roster spots like with a Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, and for the future, those first-round picks. They've got 4 of them, and a couple of them can end up in really good positions. They own the Sacramento's first-round pick. They own Memphis's, but that's top 8 protected. But if that doesn't translate this year, it will in future years. Then they've got the Clippers first round pick, and of course their own. If they get their hands on say 2 or 3 of those, get a Jason Tatum, a Marcus Smart, and somebody else, you have flipped your team around on the fly. Right. You don't have to go through any long rebuild.
That's right.
And that may convince say a guy like Drew Holiday to say, I think that's the biggest key important thing in all this. The Pelicans, I think, have to retain Drew Holiday. So they have to show him a commitment and to be able to win right away.
Right. And you're also, again, as you mentioned earlier, Mirotic, Randall, Moore, really everybody on that roster right now is open to be moved, but it's been moved for young players or draft picks, assets that can be turned into other assets down the line. Give us another team.
My second one I like, you got to mention now New York. After that Porzingis deal, they suddenly have more assets. They already had good assets. They got their first round pick. They've got young guys like Kenny Knox, Frank Ntilikina, and a few others. But now they've added a future first-round pick from Dallas. They've got Dennis Smith, so they don't need all those point guards. And here's the jewel. They're right now the worst team in the NBA. If they've got a 14% chance of laying that first-round pick, the top 3 worst teams do. What's that?
Which is going to be?
Oh, well, yeah, it's pretty obvious. It's got to be Zion Williamson.
Right. For the novice out there doesn't watch a lot of basketball.
If you haven't watched Duke play, please go watch Duke play. This guy is a man amongst boys.
Yes.
He honestly looks like the best, talent to come out of the college ranks since, I would say, honestly, even close to Anthony Davis.
Why would New York give that up, though?
Well,
why would they give that up for Anthony Davis?
If you look at their previous history, or recent history, let's say, they haven't had a winning team, and I was trying to figure out since when. Last time they made the playoffs, since when? They have such a big fan base that is starved to win.
Right.
They suddenly created 2 max slots. So you know that everybody's saying they gave Porzingis away for free, and I kind of agree. They didn't get good, true superstar value back.
Right.
Why did they do that? Well, chances are they know that somebody's coming. Some big name. Is it Kyrie Irving? Is it Kevin Durant? Is it Anthony Davis? Their thinking is if we can get one of these guys, we'll, then we'll be able to drag in another guy. We may be able to trade for Anthony Davis.
$70 million in cap room.
Right.
They'll have $70 million. So that's two max players.
Give me another team.
My dark horse team is Denver.
Okay. Why? And who?
I like that Denver has a lot of young talent, especially they have an abundance of it on the perimeter. So Will Barton, Monty Moore. I mean, they just have guards that you can plug in immediately who have already had success in the NBA and can start. Now, the picks might be the issue with Denver because they're going to always be in the middle of the draft the way that they are. But I think that they have a lot of talent that you could go after. And then another team that I like is I kind of like Phoenix for some reason. I've been thinking about Phoenix a lot lately. If they were willing to part with Ayton and to give you T.J. Warren and a couple of picks because Phoenix is going to be low.
Yes.
I mean, that could be a very attractive deal too because you've got your center there in Ayton, and then you get your small forward in Warren, and you have Drew. I think you can start building a good, solid team around that.
I get Boston. I get New York. I get Los Angeles, obviously. Why would these other small markets or medium markets have a chance to be able to retain Anthony Davis? Why would it be not more than a one-year rental?
Well, I could see it being Denver getting involved because let's see, Kawhi Leonard, right? He went to Toronto. Chances are, everybody thought, first of all, they had no chance.
Right.
He was told it's going to be a rental by his agency. Told he's just going to be a rental. He's going to be there for 1 year. He's going to go move on, probably go back to Los Angeles with the Clippers. Now, with Toronto winning a lot of games, and I've heard that he's really liking his situation up there, there's a good chance he's going to stay. Same thing happened with Paul George. He got traded to OKC. Everybody's saying, you just gave up Victor Oladipo, Donatas Sabonis, two young, good players for a 1 year rental. Well, guess what? Paul George just re-signed with OKC this past summer. So that's the thought. If you're a winning team, you can convince a player with your culture, with all those wins, basically shower him with everything that he didn't get his last stop. So that's why I'm also looking at, say, a Toronto. We just talked about Toronto. Toronto's already gone all in with Kawhi Leonard. Why don't you go a little bit more and grab AD? Philly could do the same thing. They've got Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, Jimmy Butler.
Right.
Maybe it's not going to work. You give,
especially with Butler and Simmons, because Butler's a ball-dominant player. We've heard that
they're butting heads.
Okay.
So maybe Ben Simmons is on the out there. You trade him back to Louisiana. So I don't know.
Guys, I get it, but then you still got Rich Paul in Anthony Davis' ear saying you got to get to a big market. Okay.
Yeah, but doesn't become our problem anymore.
Right.
And so if he goes, Denver's the second best team in the West. And if they added an Anthony Davis to go along with Jokic, you're putting yourself up to the top 3 front court in the league. And they have, if they keep Gary Harris in the deal, they could still be an elite team. And we're talking about we're on the downs. If let's say Kevin Durant leaves Golden State, and all you've got is Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and an aging Draymond Green, well then the Warriors are suddenly very vulnerable. And Denver could jump past them if you had an Anthony Davis. So I wouldn't count them out. And if he says he wants to be part of a consistent winner, if you win if they made it to the conference finals with him, why would you leave and then go to LA?
Yeah, right. To play with a 35 or 37-year-old LeBron James with not a lot around you, right?
And
there.
he's already breaking down.
Right.
We've seen what happened to the Lakers when
was it
he's not
18 games now?
I saw 17, maybe it's 18 now, but I think it
becomes Kobe Bryant part 2.
Yeah.
Where you're just hanging on with an injured player.
Let's grab some phone calls. Jeffrey is with us. Jeffrey, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Jeffrey.
Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
I think the NBA has a problem, and they've been having this problem for the past 7 or 8 years. And I call it it's a LeBron James effect. the players, these young players that are coming in the NBA now, they genuflect to LeBron James. He is the guy that they look up to. And LeBron James is like he's like a carnival that's going from town to town. That's the way he look at the NBA. He don't look at the NBA like an individual basketball player playing for a great team. It's all about business. And I don't even watch the NBA anymore.
Okay.
I really don't.
Jeffrey, we appreciate the phone call. Guys, is it about LeBron James?
It is, and you know what? LeBron is smart for going this route. What do business owners do? What does every NBA owner do? They've made it a business. They treat their players as just pieces. At least most of them. You know, we've heard maybe some stories to the exception, but for the most part, that's what NBA teams do. When they can grab somebody better, improve their team somehow, they have no problem throwing you aside. And that's all LeBron's done. He's always chosen his best situation. And you know what? Kudos to him, I think.
Yeah, I think LeBron is separate from the rest of the complaints that people have about super teams. Again, we talked about the NBA's always had super teams. I think the problem that people feel about LeBron is that he reaches into other organizations.
Right.
And this isn't the first time. Anthony is not the first player that LeBron has sent subtle messages to about having him come to him.
They've had super teams, but the super teams were built by general managers and
Right.
presidents of organizations. Now they're being built by players. And as you mentioned with LeBron, again, trying to get these super teams together, I think that's what rubs people the wrong way sometimes. Dave is uptown. Dave, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Dave.
Oh, love the show.
Thank you, Dave.
My question is this. We've known for a couple of years now Boston has been preparing to make a run at Davis. And yet all we've heard this week as well, they can't trade for him now because of Kyrie Irving and the Rose Rule and the contract. But listen, if they really think they're in danger of losing him, why wouldn't they at least consider putting Kyrie Irving in a deal to get Davis? Trading him to New Orleans. His contract is up July 1st. He's not going to re-up here. You know he's not going to stay here.
Right.
And then Irving could re-sign with Boston. If you're confident he wants to play with Davis in Boston, you know, you'd have a good chance to re-sign him. If he doesn't want to stay, then you're not giving up that much by putting him in a deal now. If he's
Right.
going to leave anyway to go to New York or L.A., I don't understand why that option isn't a possibility if, in fact, as it seems to be, the Celtics have been preparing to make a run at Davis for years. I mean, it seems like they would be prepared to try something a little unorthodox or a little creative.
I'll ask the
maybe
panel.
to get him now and not wait for the summer.
Thank you, Dave. Guys?
I don't think it's to their benefit to trade for Kyrie Irving because then you're just getting Kyrie and maybe a
You're
draft
getting rid
pick.
of your biggest piece that's
Right.
going to attract Anthony Davis to go up there and stay up there and sign long term.
And then Kyrie's not going to stay here.
Right.
So you lose.
So you lose.
Yeah.
So New Orleans is not going to make that deal because
Right.
they have no interest in a guy that's going to walk out the door. And of course, Boston doesn't want to get rid of everything because not only are you trading away Kyrie Irving, you got to at least appease New Orleans with something. So you're going to also trade Jason Tatum,
Right.
a lot of other young guys.
Sure.
Now, what's Boston got left?
It's
So
not
no.
in New Orleans' best interest to get Kyrie Irving because
No,
Kyrie Irving's not going to stay. You want players that you have under contract that you're going to keep for a while. All right, guys, last question for you. Will AD ever play again this season or at any time in a Pelican uniform?
No, absolutely not. I just wrote a piece this morning. The way everything's been trending since the news broke, it never appeared so, but now it just keeps getting worse and worse. You already talked about how he's been taken off, the video boards and a lot of other places by the New Orleans Pelicans. There's no chance he's going to play ever again. The divide is there. It's real. Now I'm just waiting for them to ask him to stay home, and that may come as soon as in a couple of days.
20 seconds.
Yeah, he's done. He's never going to play again. Never.
Never going to play again. Wonder how that's going to work because I mean, again, that means they have to banish him from everywhere. He's not going to be around.
So did with Kawhi.
Yeah,
The
no,
Spurs
I get
did
it.
with Kawhi.
I get it.
Pay attention to tomorrow's media session. He's
Yeah,
going to talk for
and
the
he will
first
talk
time.
tomorrow. Yeah, no doubt about it. David Grubb, CressySports.com, Oleh, Kosel, the Bird Rights. Thanks for being on our panel tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. Also, Pelican Sports Television. That's 9 p.m. every Friday night. Catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2 and the iHeart Radio app. That's weekdays noon to 2. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. All the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports can be seen at ericasher.com as well. Again, special thanks to our guests tonight, David Grubb and also Oleh Kosel. Also to the WLE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, also Richard King, Alex Chacon, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.